Hey everyone, and welcome to another photobook review. This time we are going to be covering Ota Yuuri's first photobook. Now, I was recommended this by the NMB bros, so shout out to all of you out there who love NMB. This is for you. And as always, we are going to look at the front cover, back cover, and then go into it and analyze it all. So this is the front cover right here. As you can see, a very nice simple portrait, a little bit of highlights over here that are blown out, but I think with the whole feel of this photo book, I feel like this image really fits well with what's going to happen inside, where it's a lot of this where the shadows are lifted, you see some of it blown out a little bit. It's very light and airy feeling. And in the back, we can kind of get that sense as well with all of this white over here, as we see a trend in photo books. We see this here with her right in the middle having a nice expression on her face. This isn't bad at all. And now going to the inside cover, we have this one right here of her relaxing over here next to a bench to contrast this one where she's sitting on the other side. That's a very nice attention to detail where they're sitting on different one. It's kind of like Coke versus Pepsi when you look at this image. But then with this other image, you kind of get a different sense where this one's more relaxed. And this one over here, she's getting ready to leave, kind of signifying the end of the photo book. So it's really nice that they show this at the very end. Now this photo book generally doesn't really have like a whole chronological feeling to it, which is different than some of the other photo books we've seen. This one is a little bit more like separated by themes and then coming back to certain themes. You'll see more when I start talking about the inside of the photo book, but it's really interesting how it approaches this regular aspect of photo books where usually it's chronological. And this one is just a little bit different, which I appreciate. So we open up to the first page and we see right here, we see the title of the photo book at the same style that we see in the front. Then we open up to some silhouettes of her right here holding some flowers and right here throwing it all away. This is a little introduction for this actual photo book. I'm not sure exactly the sense that I get. Again, like I usually say, the first image should be the strongest. This one is fairly strong, and then this one kind of continuing a story, but I feel like it doesn't really leave me that impact that I really want in the beginning of a photo book. We get into the theme of at school. We get this nice one of her laying down, staring into the camera. It's a little blurry, as you can see, it's focused right here instead of her face. And you guys know I like to keep my focus a little bit sharp than blurry. Although I do excuse it sometimes when there's action or when something is really emotional or has a really good face where it can excuse it. Then after a couple pages, we move on to these two images right here, which I think really help connect each other because they're both near the same place. As you can see, the curtain is right here and the curtain is right here. But this one is more of a sitting down, relaxing, spreading her legs, kind of showing a little bit more personality. And this one is a little bit more like peeking into her and seeing what she's doing. So it's a nice wide to tight differentiator where I feel like these two really play off of each other well. Now next up is this one right here, and I actually kind of like this one because the way that she's looking at the camera really engages you, and her gaze is really appealing to the eye. Like it really draws you in there. Like compared to this one right here, like if you compare these two, this one is much more appealing to the eye. This one is her looking at you kind of down, but then this one she's looking straight on at you like she wants to ask you something. And I really like the feel of this. I just wish it was just a little bit straighter. Then move on to some basketball, and real quick, this one's supposed to be a little bit in action. It's a little bit too crooked for me. Like they went for that Dutch angle. Not a real big fan of this angle. Maybe doing it more portrait like this would have helped. As you can see, this one is a very Dutch angle as well. Best one of this series, I say, is this one because of her expression. Her expression kills it. And plus there's a little highlight. You guys know how I like my hairlight. And then we move on to some festival-esque ones, and I'll mention this one right here because I think I like this one the most out of the series of these, and that's because this one's a little bit wider, you get a little bit more of a sense, but thanks to the flash, you only see this limited area. But the little glimpse you do see, you can kind of tell what's going on, and again, not a big fan of on-camera flash lighting, so this series is mostly that, and that's thanks to the darkness. If there was like maybe a little lantern or something to play with, then maybe it would have been okay to have a little flash on the side with that color. Kind of like this image right here where the flash is coming straight on, but the sparklers make it look like it's coming from there. Now, if the light was a little bit more orange, then maybe it could be executed a little bit better. That way it matches the color of these. But as it is right now, it kind of looks like a light is hitting her from over here to the front of her, and the sparkles are right here. Again, maybe just little tweaks here and there, and then I think this image would have turned out killer. Next, we move on to these images right here. This is another set of it being close and it being far away. This one I think could have been a little bit different. It's a little too similar to the one we've seen before with the curtain, and it seems a little repetitive, but I do really like this image right here. You guys know how I like my wide images telling a little bit more of a story and having the character really small in there. And her crouching down is actually amplifying that effect. And seeing this big blue sky kind of gives off a feeling of like there's more out there. Now, one thing I want to bring up is, you see right here, this looks like a white page, right? But really, right here, you can see that there's a little bit of detail, so this isn't truly one, but it does kind of look like it thanks to it being so overblown. This is probably a day where it was super bright, and that's why she's in shadow with the light coming into the sun flare. That's why you can't really see her face that in focus. So a lot of aspects to take into place, and that's why the sky is white and not blue. But then you come to these images, and after that break, it kind of seems like it would have been better to actually just go straight into this one instead of showing this one right here, because the white page kind of gives a sense of a break. And if it would have been a break and then to a brand new set of images, I feel like that would have flowed a little bit better. Then we have this one right here with shooting through the glass. You can see it's through glass thanks to a little bit of reflections we have over here. If you have a different type of filter on the front of your lens, a polarizing filter, then that'll help out with this kind of things where you shoot through glass and you can see through the glass. So seeing the rest of this photo book, I feel like this was a little bit more intentional, and they had that option, but their choice of style in their artwork, I feel like leads a little bit more towards this. So this makes a little bit more sense than you would when you first look at it. Then of course, as all photo books, we need a little bit of eating ones in there. This image I actually like. This one right here, the way that she's looking at it, I wish the bottle wasn't there actually. Like if she was there, like not maybe concentrating as much, but maybe like gazing off into the distance. I feel like this is a nice pose with the lighting, that this would have came off really well. Because it doesn't really set off a story or anything. It's kind of like we get the idea that she's drinking this, and then having one more in here doesn't really add any value to it. It kind of feels like, oh hey, we also have this image, I really like it, let me just add it in there afterwards. See, now this one helps build out a little bit more of a story. We have this Ferris wheel right here, kind of setting up, okay, there's a Ferris wheel in a big environment, and then we have her right here next to the carriage where the Ferris wheel is. It's where you go inside. And she's over here posing right next to it. And we move on to her inside of it. I feel like this image isn't that strong over here to dedicate a whole page to it. I feel like these two right here, even though they're like a second apart, I feel like add a little bit more of a story and narrative, like closed eyes then open. Kind of feels a little bit more like it's you and her connected. Then we have this one right here, and this one's super overblown. Kind of looks like he had Vaseline on the lens or something. Like when I see this, I think like 70s style photography where it's a little bit overblown and it has this type of feel to it. Then we have a couple of pool ones, and it's her jumping into the pool. This is a nice little sequence. This one isn't the most flattering, but that's kind of the point of these two images right here, just kind of setting up of like, here's her jumping into the pool. Then we have this series right here. Now this photographer seems to really like lens flares, as we can see right here with this magenta light refracting onto the lens. And this is like the most lube we get in this photo book, which I think is a nice change of pace from all the different photo books that we've been getting recently. And these two sets right here are kind of like, all right, drying off, and bam, here I am, full portrait. It's a little overblown again, but that's the style of the photographer, as we've seen from other images. Next we have these images right here, and I think it's starting to say a story, but then these two are a little bit too similar. It kind of feels like he just cropped in a little. And I could see that it's this and then this, letting go of it. But then I feel like having this and then just this one right here would have said the story enough without this image, even though I like this image more than this one. So maybe if it was this close up and then this letting go of it, would have been perfect. This is a nice one. I kind of wish she was in the driver's side. That way it's kind of like, oh hey, let's go kind of feeling to it, instead of like, yo, hurry up, let's go already. Now there's a lot of these car images and I feel like a lot of them aren't the best. I kind of like this one right here. I feel like it's a little bit too close. Like if your lens can't do it, if you have a crop sensor or something, then I say just back out of the car a little and then shoot inside to make it look a little bit more wider, because right here it's a tad bit too close. Then we have an insert of some bubbles. These aren't my favorite. I feel like the light really wasn't in their favor for these. Then we have these interesting ones because this is a little bit different than what the photographer usually does. If you see, there's a lot of shadow in this one right here. And as we've seen before, it's a lot flat images that are kind of blown out, and this one is all about the silhouettes. So I think that's a nice little relaxer from all the style that we got before. Now next move on to some swimsuit ones, and these aren't my favorites. The light is alright. I mean, you can't expect much, but I feel like it's a little bit too low. It makes her legs look really big, and that's because he's shooting so low with the legs coming at the camera. So those two combinations together where it doesn't really complement it. See, and then here's a reverse effect. Here's the camera close to her hand and arms and face where it looks bigger, and then the rest of this looks relatively small. I actually like this image right here. Looking back, looking over what seems to be like a boat. If she was wearing something maybe blue to match it, but I kind of like that it's pink and it kind of stands out a little bit. Like in the beginning I was thinking maybe it should be a little darker, blue, a little bit more moody, but I feel like this actually fits along with it. Then we have the return of the Dutch angles where you have to turn the photo book like this in order to see what's going on. Now here's the problem with shooting so shallow depth of field where you really want that blurry background. But this sort of things happen where one eye is out of focus and the other is in focus. That's a really big problem with having such a low aperture, because that's what happens. Only some of it gets in focus because the rest is out of focus and blurry. So right here we see this nice bokeh in the background, but then we also see her eye getting a little bit blurry, so that's why you have to sometimes see whether it's best or not to do this. And as we can see in this image, the shallow depth of field really plays well. Everything in the background is out of focus with her being perfectly in focus right here, thanks to her being a little bit farther away from the background itself. This image right here I like. This image right here, you can really see the blurriness right here, and I think it really adds a nice softness to it, even though she isn't perfectly in focus. Next we have a couple more silhouette images. I feel like he didn't stop up to get her face in focus, maybe because of ISO issues. But that's just what I'm thinking. Maybe he did actually go for the silhouette since we have seen silhouette ones before. Next we move on to these images right here, which are inside of a room. We usually have these in photo books. The lighting on these isn't my favorite. I feel like the window might have been a little bit too small that they're next to. Usually it's these big open windows, but right here you can see that there's light over here reflected. I don't know if that comes from a flash since it's so harsh. Again, not my favorite type of lighting for these. Though this one right here, this one's actually fairly nice lighting. Thanks to the window over here, you can see there's more of a fall off right here thanks to being so close to the window, where if you're closer to a light source, it actually makes it a little bit different from shadow to lights. It's a more rapid fall off, whether if you're farther away, then it's a more gradual one, which is why for videos, it's a little bit better to have it a little bit farther away. Meanwhile, in photos, you have this type of feel to it versus, you know, something like this, where most of it is the same exposure, and this one has light and then dark, very rapid fall off. See, here's another example. Right here we see the light and then we see the darkness. So the window must be like right here, versus this one where it's a little bit more back and you see it's a little bit more of a gradual fall off. Oh, by the way, I like these images right here. Eating and like the expression she has right here, really nice. I feel like this image right here would have been strong if it was more in focus and maybe the exposure just a little bit down, but that's just me. This image right here though, exposure is really nice. The light is coming from right here, blasting her right here, and I think this is a nice image overall. Expression is a little bit sad, but I feel like it fits with the darkness around her. Then we move on to, this looks like a set with these lights over here with the stands. And I like this image actually. I like the expression she has right here, mixed with, you know, the hair light right there and the darkness in the background. Yeah, I like it. Oh, and also we get that trope of farther away right there and then her looking back or looking up at you. Then we randomly have these images in here. I feel like, especially after those images, these kind of jump out. And then we move on to the next images. It's a little bit darker than these, but this image right here, I feel like would have followed along a little bit better than those other two. And this one I actually really like like the whole decoration of everything, the way this leads you over here to her. Really nice, really nice, like actually placing down where you want it to be intentionally. And then her right here, this is a nice angle. As you can see, it isn't just straight on her head. It's a little bit more balanced and everything is a little bit more proportional. And then we throw back to her throwing it, and then it in the hands. Again, it's a little separation. I wish this one was before and then going back to this, because then we get the flowers on the floor. And I feel like it would have been stronger to just end on these images right here to throw back to the very beginning. Right here, very nice. Capturing from far, getting the shadow down here. It's a little grainy, but I feel like that's the ISO. And that's where it ends. Again, I wish it would have ended on this image right here to contrast the first page. Would have probably switched them a little. And yeah, that's the photo book. Let me know what you guys think about this photo book down in the comments down below. If you picked it up, go ahead and look through it, because as I always say, looking at the photo book in person is like a million times better than looking at it online. And I mean, this is like a step up from looking at it online, because you can see me flip through the pages, but I definitely don't go through all the images, or else this video would be like 2 hours long. I looked through some of the images that I want to highlight. There's a lot of good images in here that I didn't talk about, but honestly, if you're a fan of Ota Yuuri or NMB, I say pick this up. This is like the standard photo book. Like, if you want to get a baseline of what a photo book should be standardized, then this one is probably it for you. So if you're interested in that, or if you're interested in picking it up, you can go ahead and do so, you know, on Amazon Japan or on CD Japan. I think they do photo books. Yeah, go ahead and pick it up from there. And yeah, pick it up if you want to support her and NMB. And that does it all for this video. If you enjoyed it, please go ahead and leave a like, share it if you want to share with other NMB or Ota Yuuri fans. And that does it all for this time. I'll catch you in the next photo book review.